All right, hello, and in this video we're going to look at an introduction to composite functions. This is section 5.1 in your textbook. Let's start with the definition of what a composite function is. So it's two functions where one is placed into another. Okay, that's where we have this notation, f circle g of x. That's also written f of g of x. So you can state it two different ways. This is f of g of x. This is a little circle here. We say f circle g of x. So what we're doing here is we're placing g into the function f of x. So that means we're taking all of g values and placing them into the function of f of x. So if we had a f of x function here, we would take, if these are our values in f of x, we would take these g of x values and we place them inside the f of x values. So this functional value, this function values gets placed in here. So we work our way outside the parentheses. So we're plugging x into g and then taking that answer and plugging it into f. All right. Let's take a look at an example of this using a table. So if we have some values for x, some values for f of x, and some values for g of x, and we're going to use this composite notation. There's two different composite notations, f of g of x, and the parentheses. They're the same notation, just different ways to write it. If we look at this notation on this example, what we're doing here is we're taking the value of 1 and plugging it into g. So if I were rewriting this problem, this would be f of g of 1. So that means we would plug in g of 1. We'd look that up on the table. Here's 1 on the table, and g is 0. So this value is the value that's g of 1. So we'd have f of 0. We would then go back to the table, look our x value of 0, and we'd look at their f of x value. So this would be 5. So our answer to f of g of 1 is 5. We use the table twice, so we have to go to two different x values. The first x value is the one given. The second x value is the one we get when we look in the chart the first time. So let's practice that again on the next problem. So erase these arrows and start again on the next problem. So if we do f of g of 2 here, f of g of 2, we're going to first of all plug in 2. So we're going to look at this column on the chart. We're going to look at the g answer, so that's -3. So that's what would replace g of 2. This whole thing would get replaced with -3. Now we have to look down the column again where -3 is for x and find the answer for f of x. So our answer to that one is 11. So what we're going to say is f of g of 2 is 11. All right, let's take a look at a couple more of these. We'll just do the bottom two here. Let's erase these so we can look at these again. All right, now I'm just going to do these problems by looking at the chart. So this is a reverse f of 2. So we're going to do this part first, f of 2. So we look here, f of 2. That's going to be 1. So we have g of 1, which equals 0. So that one's 0. Let's go to D here. F of 3. We'll go down to the 3 column. We look to find f. It's -1. So that means we're going to have g of -1. So we go down to the -1 column and look for G. That's 0. Okay. Let's find that. I'm going to give you a second here to do the last two. This one's a little bit different in that it's evaluating G twice. So let's figure out what this one is first. G of 1. In one column, G is 0. So we're going to look for G of 0 in the next column. So here's 0. G is 1. So we get 1 back. And in this one, we have F of whatever F of 3 is. So let's look at 3 and look for the F. That's -1. We're going to go down the column here to -1 and look for F again. So that's 7. So that's using a table to evaluate a composite function. We work our way outside, from inside to outside. All right, now we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to use a graph. So in a graph, instead of having the order of pairs listed in the table, they're listed on the graph. So we're going to be looking at this graph to see where these values would lie. So in this case, this is G. This graph is G. All right, and then we'll say the other one is F of X. All right, so when we do this problem, first problem here, we're going to look at F of 1. So we're going to evaluate F of 1 here. So we're going to look at this F graph, and we're looking for the value of 1 along the x-axis. So here we are at 1. We look down here. This is our ordered pair that goes with this. So F of 1 is actually -1. So we put -1 in there. And then we look at the G graph here, and we're looking for the value where it's -1, which is right here. So this first value is that point. So we're at -1, we're at 3. So G of -1 is actually 3. So our answer to that is 3, reading the graph. Okay, let's take a look at the second problem. Okay, we're looking at F of 5. So we're going to go down this column till we get to 5, which is right here. We look at the value, that's 1. So we're going to do G of 1. So F of 5 is 1. We plug it in there. So we now go to the column down here till we get to 1. Here's our answer. 1 on the G. So this answer is 4. All right, and let's do the final two here. This one we're going to do G of 0, so we're going to look up 0 on the G graph. Here's our 0 on the G graph. It looks like to me G of 0 is going to be 5. So we're going to look for F of 5. And this is our F graph. 5 is 1 right here. So that's our answer. Let's look at the last graph. We want G of 2. So we're going to follow this till we get to 2, which is right here. We get the same answer out of that because it's 2, 2. So we're going to look at F of 2. F of 2 is right here. So our answer is -2 on that one. So this is using a table and a graph to evaluate the composite functions. Remember, a composite function, we evaluate where we place one function value into another function value. So we're starting with X, we put it in a G, then that answer then goes into F.